They cheer for you when the lights are on. They scream your name when the ball goes in. They stand up when the buzzer sounds. And then, the arena empties. The lights shut off. The cameras stop rolling. The noise disappears. And it's just you, alone. That silence after the applause, that's where most people break. Because nobody prepares you for that part. They prepare you for success. They prepare you for fame. They prepare you for highlights. But nobody talks about the silence. Nobody talks about what happens when the crowd leaves and you still have to live with yourself. Kobe understood that silence. Not because he loved attention, but because he trained for what happens when attention is gone. See, most people work hard for the applause. Kobe worked hard for the silence. Because the silence doesn't care how talented you are. The silence doesn't care how many points you scored. The silence only asks one question. Did you really give everything you had? Or did you stop when it got uncomfortable? That's the difference. A lot of players love game night. They love the crowd. They love the jersey. They love being seen. But very few love the early mornings, the empty gym, the repetition nobody claps for, the shots nobody counts. Kobe lived there. While others were sleeping, he was already tired. While others were celebrating wins, he was reviewing mistakes. Not because someone told him to, but because deep down, he knew something most people don't want to accept. Talent gets you noticed. Discipline decides how long you last, and discipline is lonely. There is no music in discipline, no applause, no validation, just you, and the standard you refuse to lower. That's why people misunderstood him. They called him obsessed, difficult, too intense. But intensity is what it looks like when someone refuses to lie to themselves. See, a lot of people say they want greatness, but what they really want is recognition without isolation. They want the rewards without the nights alone. They want the championships, but not the sacrifice. Kobe accepted the trade. He understood something early. If you want to be uncommon, your life cannot look common. You don't wake up legendary. You don't become dangerous by accident. You build it quietly, repeatedly, when nobody is watching. That silence after the applause? That's not emptiness. That's the test. Because when there's no one left to impress, there's no one left to prove anything to, that's when you find out who you really are. And most people don't like what they find, so they distract themselves. Noise, comfort, excuses. Kobe did the opposite. He leaned into the silence. He used it. Because in silence, there are no lies, only truth. And the truth is brutal. It tells you, you didn't work hard enough. You wasted time. You chose comfort over progress. Or, it tells you that you're on the right path, even if nobody else understands it yet. That's why he could walk into an empty gym at 4 a.m., not angry, not motivated, but calm, because he wasn't chasing applause. He was building something that wouldn't disappear when the noise stopped. Pain changes people. For most, pain is a warning sign, a reason to slow down, a reason to stop. For Kobe, pain was information. It told him where the edge was. See, everybody loves the idea of toughness, until toughness asks for something in return. Because real toughness isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't complain. It just keeps showing up. There were mornings his body didn't feel right, not injured enough to sit out, not healthy enough to feel confident. That gray area, that's where careers are decided. Most people negotiate with themselves there. Just today. Just this rep. Just this one shortcut. Kobe didn't negotiate. Because he knew something dangerous. The moment you start making exceptions for yourself, you teach your mind how to quit. So he trained anyway. Not recklessly, not stupidly, but deliberately. He separated pain from injury. Injury meant stop. Pain meant adapt. And adaptation is uncomfortable. That's why people confuse discipline with punishment. They think working hard means hating your life. That wasn't it. Kobe wasn't chasing suffering. He was chasing precision. He wasn't trying to prove he could endure pain. He was proving that pain couldn't change who he was. And that's where ego starts to die. Because ego wants comfort. Ego wants validation. Ego wants to be right. But growth requires humility. It requires admitting your footwork isn't sharp enough. Your shot selection is lazy. Your focus drifts when you're tired. Most people protect their ego. Kobe attacked his. Every weakness became a project. Every failure became data. That's why losses hit him differently. To others, a loss was emotional. To him, it was instructional. What broke? Where did I hesitate? What wasn't sharp enough? No drama. No excuses. Just responsibility. And responsibility is heavy. Because once you take full responsibility, you lose the right to complain. You can't blame the coach. You can't blame the refs. You can't blame the system. It's on you. And that weight, most people don't want it. They'd rather stay talented than accountable. Kobe chose accountability, even when it isolated him. Because when you raise your standards, you separate yourself from the room. Not everyone wants to work like that. Not everyone wants to live like that. And that's okay. But don't ask for extraordinary results with ordinary habits. The hardest part wasn't the physical pain. It was the mental cost. The nights replaying mistakes. The pressure to never slip. The awareness that once you set a standard, you have to live up to it every single day. There's no off switch. That's the side nobody glamorizes. Greatness doesn't turn off when the game ends. It follows you home. It sits with you at night. It asks questions when you're tired. And the silence after the applause gets louder. Because now the expectations aren't external. They're internal. And you can't escape yourself. That's why a lot of people walk away early. Not because they can't handle the work, but because they can't handle who the work turns them into. More focused, more demanding, less tolerant of excuses, including their own. Kobe accepted that transformation. He understood that to sharpen the blade, you have to grind away parts of yourself. Comfort, ego, distractions, one by one. And what's left is something refined. Not loud, not flashy, just lethal. Eventually, the game stops. Not all at once, not dramatically. It slows down first. Your body takes longer to warm up. Recovery takes longer than the workout. The mornings feel heavier than they used to. And one day, you realize something uncomfortable. The applause isn't yours anymore. It belongs to the next generation. That moment breaks a lot of people. Because when your identity is built on performance, what happens when performance is no longer possible? That's the silence most athletes are afraid of. Not the empty gym, but the empty calendar. No practices to attend. No opponents to prepare for. No crowd to remind you who you are. Just you, without the jersey. Some people cling to the past. They replay highlights. They live in remember when. Kobe didn't. Because he never confused what he did with who he was. Basketball was the arena, not the identity. The mentality was always the point. Discipline, curiosity, relentless improvement. Those things don't retire. So when the noise faded, he didn't panic. He redirected. See, true leadership isn't about being followed. It's about raising the standard so high that others are forced to grow just to keep up. That's why not everyone liked him. He didn't lower expectations to protect feelings. He raised expectations to protect potential. And that kind of leadership is lonely. Because people love motivation until motivation demands effort. They love inspiration until inspiration exposes their excuses. So the leader often walks alone, not because he wants to, but because standards separate. Kobe understood that leadership isn't about being relatable. It's about being responsible. Responsible for the culture. Responsible for the work ethic. Responsible for the example. Even when no one is clapping anymore. That's the real test of greatness. Who are you when there's nothing left to prove? No rings to chase. No critics to silence. No spotlight to stand in. Just time, and what you choose to do with it. Most people slow down when the pressure is gone. He didn't. He learned, he created, he studied, not to stay relevant, but to stay honest with himself. Because the same discipline that built excellence must be used to redefine purpose. Otherwise, greatness collapses into nostalgia. The silence after the applause isn't the end. It's the transfer. From achievement to impact. From success to meaning. And that's harder. Because impact doesn't give you instant feedback. Meaning doesn't come with trophies. It comes quietly, in conversations, in lessons passed down, in standards that outlive you. That's the final evolution. Not being remembered for what you accomplished, but for what you demanded of yourself. When nobody was watching, when nobody was cheering, when it was just you and the silence, and you chose to honor it. At some point, the applause stops for everyone. Not just athletes, not just legends, everyone. There is a final whistle you don't hear coming. A last rep you don't know is the last. A final walk out of the gym without realizing it mattered. That's why the silence is so important. Because silence doesn't lie. It strips away the titles, the stats, the roles you hide behind. In the silence, there's only one thing left. Who you became. Not what you achieved. Not what people said about you. But who you were when nobody needed anything from you. Kobe understood that the goal was never basketball. Basketball was just the language. The message was always deeper. How you do one thing is how you do everything. How you train when you're tired. How you respond when you fail. How you carry yourself when no one is watching. That's the real resume. Because in the end, life doesn't ask how loud the crowd was. It asks, did you respect your potential? Did you waste the gift? Did you choose comfort or growth? The silence after the applause is where those answers live. Most people are afraid of that silence. They fill it with noise, distractions, validation, busy work that feels important but isn't. But silence is not your enemy. It's your mirror. It shows you exactly where you've been dishonest with yourself. And it also shows you something else, if you're brave enough to look. It shows you that meaning doesn't come from applause. Applause fades. Meaning comes from alignment. From knowing that the work you did matched the values you claimed. That your discipline wasn't an act. That your standards weren't performative. That your effort didn't disappear when the lights went out. That's why legacy isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's felt. In the people who raise their standards because they saw yours. In the ones who work a little harder because they remember how you worked. In the ones who step into discomfort because you proved it was survivable. That's what remains. Not the highlights. not the trophies. The example. So when the noise fades, and it will, when there's no one left to impress, and there won't be, ask yourself one honest question. If this is the silence after the applause, am I proud of what I did when it was quiet? Because greatness was never about being seen. It was about being real when no one was looking, and honoring the silence as much as the noise.